I do want to first mention that one of the speakers, Miss Major, from Transgender, Gender Variant, Intersex Justice Project, has not been able to make it today because she's not feeling well. She's an elder trans woman, and also her health just came up. So we want to remember that her presence is very missed, and give a little devotion to one of the fiercest queens doing work in prison abolition. So tonight, basically, we're going to be looking at the intersections of issues like colonialism, capitalism, globalization, with and in the lives of trans women. And I'm going to be speaking personally about this and the intersection of these issues within my own body. Also, and experience. Also, we're going to be using the prison industrial complex and prison abolition as sort of a lens for framing and taking entry into these really deep issues. So with that, I would like to introduce one of my dear friends and former teachers, Crystallee Crain. That's Dr. Crain to you. And she's been kind enough to come here and help us out with this event. And she does amazing work with violence in African American communities and is a huge ally in queer communities as well. And I'll let her speak for herself, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm a professor here in the Undergraduate Studies Department, and I teach in the Peralta Community College District in politics and in sociology. I've been lucky to have Emmi as a student and a number of folks in the audience, so hello and I love you. I've been asked to introduce the speakers and to help sort of frame and moderate this discussion. And so thank you for respecting me as an ally and helping me model for everyone else here. So to begin, we have Emmi Bevensee, who is a queer trans woman by nature, affinity in politics, and human by birth. She works against violence of all kinds, but has a specific depth of awareness into violence against trans women and its causes, effects, and possible broad range of solutions. She holds, facilitates, helps, and organizes workshops, lectures, panels, and direct actions and discussions on issues of transgender identity. Emmi is also a musician, poet, and writer. Help me by welcoming Emmi Bevensee.
Thanks so much, family. So first, to start off the evening, I would like to introduce the option of taking a moment to think and feel with the depth of what is really in question here tonight. And so I would like to ask that we take a moment to breathe and also to remember, acknowledge, and honor all the trans people who have been murdered and all the natives as well who have been murdered and continue to be murdered, whether by human hands or by state hands. And if we could do that, I would really appreciate that. I say that first as a frame of reference. Thank you, by the way, for the workshop, because as some of you may know, November 20th is Trans Day of Remembrance. It is an event of mourning, of recognition of the disproportionate violence in trans communities, but it's also a day of celebration in life. And this Trans Day of Remembrance, if you're San Francisco local or otherwise, we will be holding, well, a bunch of people, I didn't organize that event myself, but I'll be attending. From City Hall, people are going to meet at 5 p.m. and then they're going to march to City of Refuge. And I think it promises to be a pretty powerful event. So thank you so much. So just to get started with, I have 4 main points that I really want to address. And these are my bias, you know, in all transparency. This is my cause, my come from in this, and this is why I'm here. And it's a gross oversimplification, and there's a whole bunch more complexity and richness that we're not going to have time to get to tonight. But this is the core of what I want to speak about. So, the first one is that the situation for trans women, especially those who are additionally marginalized, whether by their race, immigration status, bodily ability, so many things like this, is currently terrible. It's absolutely reprehensible. There's a lot of things going on, but in general, there's some deep flaws. 2, the situation for trans women intersects and is relevant to the experiences and oppressions of cis, and that means, in this context, non-trans, of cis people as well. So the issues of oppression that trans women face are inseparable from the issues of oppression that everyone faces, because we all live in this world, and for deeper reasons than that as well, but we'll get to that. 3, our liberation through and beyond repressive systems such as capitalism, colonialism, and globalization is interdependent, and we urgently need each other. So that's kind of a call to action for allies, queer, trans people, and everyone else who's in these movements from any angle, to recognize the need for all of us to listen and work with each other. And the 4th thing is that there are varieties of movements and organizations already happening that need support and connection. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of really exciting work going on. In the face of huge issues, there's also people and movements doing the unbelievable in the face of huge obstacles. So I just want to recognize that's there. Yeah. So just to get started, I kind of want to do a little check-in with folks, just see about a few basic words and terms, just see where we're all at, because this is a very mixed group. We're all coming from different places, I think, with these questions. So I just want to do a little check-in. So basically, I'm going to list a word or idea, and if you all feel really comfortable with it, really confident, you know what I'm talking about, we have a shared understanding, you know, give me a thumbs up, okay? And then if you feel like, meh, so, you know, we can do a little sideways, kind of thumb sideways. And if you feel like you'd really like some help in framing these questions, and you need a little bit more information, we'll do a thumbs down. And so I'm not going to have time to go super deep into any of these questions. That's actually not what this workshop is about. If you want to learn more about trans sensitivity and stuff, this is not the place to go. Sorry. But that's important too. So the first term is a basic one, transgender. Has anybody got some ideas? Looks like we're really confident about that, kind of so-so. So, in honesty, I'm kind of so-so with that word, you know, because it means about 1 million different things to 1 million different people. And it's like, what's a queer anyways? So if you could tell me, I'd appreciate that, you know, maybe we can talk afterwards. But in general, a transgression of some sort of birth-assigned gender or sex. We could say that, and we could... It's a problematic definition, but it's hard to use words to describe phenomena of existence. So moving on. Trans women. Does anybody know what a trans woman is? Okay, so we kind of get it. I'm not going to go too deep into that. But usually someone in general who was born birth-assigned, either boy or male or what have you, and chooses to express their authenticity in a way different than that. and it's a broad category. I'm not trying to leave anybody out. If you're identified as a transgender or as transgender or trans woman, then it's not my place to tell you what you are. You are what you are. You are what you say you are. So, okay, what about capitalism? Alright, you know what I'm talking about. It's that, seems like I've got a little bit of sympathetic crowd here. Possibly. Can't imagine why. But, you know, we're generally here, we're talking about an economic system that's largely based in corporate power, where people don't own their means of production or even their means of livelihood. That power is delegated to a select few with that level of privilege and access. So that can take it or leave it, right? Colonialism. So whether you're for it or against it. Okay, colonialism basically is the stealing and destruction of cultures, peoples, resources, and within a capitalist paradigm or any other growth economy, people are basically resources, so it ends up being the destruction of people, whether through genocide, the history of this country, the history of this time of year is all wrapped up in colonialism. So it's kind of like the natural offshoot of a growth-based economy that depends on constant growth in order to exist. So what about globalization? So globalization, I don't really, it's one of those things that, again, it's really dense and complicated. In a general way, we could describe it as, without being too technical, a push towards global capitalism in the sense that markets are controlled increasingly by corporate power, that increasingly mandates come down into the most local arenas from large institutions such as the World Bank, the WTO, the IMF. WTO is World Trade Organization, IMF, the International Monetary Fund, and there's other big names there too, but for the sake of that, it's often about concerned with the exploitation of third world economies by opening them up to try to compete in a market that they have no chance in order for larger multinational corporations to come in and exploit the natural resources, etc. So that's a big part of globalization, and as you can see, that was completely objective. I have no bias whatsoever. What about privilege? What privileges? Let's say an unfair advantage. Privilege is my skin. Privilege is me passing as a cis woman. You know, privilege is any number of things. It's hetero privilege, it's